The next day, Vincent came to the blacksmith to visit the great master and show his unusual technique. Seeing her, the dwarf was surprised, because this strange style of swordsmanship is similar to the technique of the hero king and the great demon from legends. And this is very good. Now it became clear to the blacksmith, the boy was given the crimson lotus for a reason. After demonstrating his abilities, the black-haired man asks if what is shown is enough. The dwarf declares that this is quite enough, almost enough for him to make a sword for the young master, but he lacks one detail for this. Hansen has long looked at the project of one sword, but for him he needs a rare ingredient. After hearing this, the boy declares that he will buy it. However, not everything is so simple. The dwarf says that this thing is too valuable and rare, which is why it cannot be bought for any amount of money, namely he needs a mastodon horn. The guys looked at each other in surprise, and soon a rare object appeared in front of the great blacksmith. Seeing the horn, the man could not restrain himself and almost shouted, but Vincent stopped the blacksmith at the time, telling him that this was secret information and only his father and Railson knew about it. Having calmed down, Hansen assumes that they were destined to meet and agrees to make a sword for Vincent, but the black-haired man is interested in something a little different. He asks if it is possible to add a horn to the crimson lotus instead of creating a new sword. After all, this sword symbolizes the beginning of his father's career, and he also likes the crimson lotus very much. At the same time, the dwarf grabs a sword and promises to insert the horn into the crimson lotus, after which he tells the young master to return in 3 weeks. 3 weeks later, the guys were standing in front of the forge and were shocked, because the workshop was engulfed in fire. Sari was terrified and red-eyed asked her to come to her senses. Soon he decides that he must save Master Hansen, but Yulion did not understand how the guy was going to save him, because he would not jump into the fire. The black-haired man knows that his sword attacks will cut through anything, so he's going to break through the door and get inside quickly. The ghost tries to reason with the guy and asks him not to commit rash acts, but Vincent was already determined and was not going to stop in the face of danger. Once inside, Yulion notices the blacksmith and points to him. Master Hansen was lying in the corner of the forge. The fire actually swallowed him up in its embrace. The black-haired man tries to reach the man, but the dwarf was unconscious, when suddenly Yulion notices something strange, namely a crimson lotus. It looks as if the building was filled with fire mana, while Vincent suggests that the dragon bone was much stronger than Master Hansen expected. At first he decides to take the man out of the burning building, when suddenly the fire boards fall in front of the boy's face. Now Vincent does not know what to do, because the exit is blocked. If the guys do not do anything, they will be consumed by fire, which is why the black-haired man turns to his friend and asks for advice from him. Then the blonde-haired man in a hurry asks Vincent if he knows any protective techniques. Julion's idea is to wait out the fire, because even a dragon bone can't keep the fire going forever. At the same time, Red-Eye declares that he has some sword technique that is completely designed for protection, because he is not only Vincent Adenka, but also Daven Samion. With these thoughts, he uses the Samion sword technique. The first chapter is the Destroyer of Mild Steel. A soft sword destroys steel, and the quality of its mana depends on desires. Slowly it strikes the fire that is near it with a quiet sword. This is the first chapter of the Destroyer of Soft Steel. Yulion was shocked, because his black-haired friend really uses the Samion family sword techniques. Seeing this, his interest in finding out who the red-eyed one is increases even more. Soon the fire went out, and they barely survived. The dwarf coughed and regained consciousness. The first thing Hansen wants to know is how the guy used the Samion family's sword technique. But Vincent notices that if Hansen is talking complete nonsense, then he must be completely fine. At the same time, the man himself realizes that this is impossible and most likely he dreamed it, but in principle it is not so important, because the sword is completed. The blacksmith had never forged a dragon bone before, and he had no idea that mana would flow out of nowhere and start spitting fire. At this moment, Vincent walked up to the floating sword and grabbed it with both hands. There was a gorgeous weapon in front of him. The guy felt as if the sword resonated with him. At that moment a sign appeared on the blade. The dwarf distracted the young gentleman. He wondered why Vincent stood rooted to the spot, and did he really not like the end result? However, this is not the case at all. This sword has become much more incredible. At the same time, Yulion noticed something amiss. Because if all the events were arranged by the head of the family, Arslan, Then how could he not have known that the dragon bone would behave like this, if the spirit in Arslan's place would have left some clue along with the bone? At this moment, the red-eyed man again turns to the blacksmith and asks if he can make him a new sword. Hearing this, Hansen assumes that the young master still did not like this sword. However, this is not entirely true. The guy is sure that since the dwarf made one sword from dragon bones, the next one will be even better. The dwarf assures that it will take time, because he still has to clean up all this mess, and besides, they no longer have such bones left, and Hansen assures Red-Eye that he will be able to see such a rare thing again during his lifetime, but the guys only grinned when they heard this statement. Soon another piece of dragon bone appeared in front of the blacksmith. It was brought by Railsa as requested by her young master. When he saw the horn, the man could not restrain himself and almost shouted, but the girl stopped the blacksmith at the time, telling him that this was secret information and only the head of the family knew about it. Having calmed down, the gnome expresses his surprise, because he did not expect that the follower of Sarvana would undoubtedly give up the dragon bone for the sake of her young master. Taking it, Hansen assures her that although he does not know how long it will take him, he is going to make a perfect sword with a dragon bone. Returning from the forge, the girl was completely immersed in her thoughts. She blames herself for giving up halfway and almost abandoning the legacy of her mistress. However, she could not have thought that the guy had grown so much. She is extremely impressed by this. Railsa's thoughts are interrupted by a black-haired boy. He apologizes to her for taking away the donated part of the bone and now awkwardly asks how he can make amends to her. However, the girl assures the guy that she is not worth it, because she received payment for this dragon bone 14 years ago. After all, when Vincent was born and perfected as a martial artist, these events are the most valuable reward for all her efforts. Upon hearing this, the guy takes the blade out of the sheath and assures the girl in front of him that she will be overjoyed. He had thought about it before when he defeated the Crimson Demon. About the way in which he will be able to defeat Railsa, a 7-star martial artist, and now he intends to defeat her today and learn her feature. At the same time, the girl with a smile on her face repeats again that she is not going to succumb to the young gentleman. An incredible duel was taking place in the courtyard. Soon during the battle the brightest light appeared that struck Vincent, so everything around was frozen. The alarmed boy heard the voice of the approaching princess. She said that this was not enough. The girl reminds the guy about his recent words, but she believes that Vincent is not even close to victory. With this speech she strikes her blow, but the red-eyed one barely manages to block it, and as a result, a powerful explosion is heard. The head chamberlain was genuinely surprised that the guy was able to block her blow, because she used mana equivalent to 4 stars. In addition, her sword and the young master's sword remained intact. Usually such an amount of mana breaks the blade. At this moment, the guy has already found a way for his sword and strikes back, but the girl manages to jump away. But she notices that this time the red-eyed one uses completely different flows and power. Seeing this, she wonders what kind of power the Crimson Lotus has at the moment. Soon she notices the mark on the sword and realizes that this sword will not break, because thanks to the peculiarity of the Dwarf King, the Crimson Lotus absorbs all vibrations and blows. Now the sword can absorb the characteristics of its owner. This is the new power of the Crimson Lotus. Railsa tells the guy that the sword has clearly become stronger, which is why she will try to be even tougher. At that moment, the girl disappeared from the Berserker's field of view. As a friend, he felt her presence behind him, but he understands that he cannot let her speed fool him, so he decides to just feel the mana she uses. Soon he opens his eyes and strikes, but swinging his blade, the girl declares that the guy did not guess. But the guy with a smile on his face grabs her sword with his bare hands. He knew that Railsa would aim at his back. The white-haired girl was surprised by this. Besides, she is surprised that the guy will learn to track her movements after 1 month. At this moment, Vincent uses a variation and strikes a double blow with the sword. Chapter 1 The King of the Dwarves. There was a terrible explosion in the arena. The girl was not injured. Besides, the guy spent 2 of his blows, but to her surprise she lost her sword. Soon Vincent throws the sword and asks Railsa to take it, because he does not want to win an easy victory against a man who has lost his sword. The girl looked at the young gentleman strangely, and soon declared that Vincent had behaved rather arrogantly. She also reminds the guy that not all monsters and martial artists will be as gentle with him as she is. After all, opponents who will be stronger than him will ignore his condition and will not show a drop of sympathy. That's what she is going to remind her young master by releasing her strength. Seeing this, the red-eyed man said that he understood what she wanted to convey to him, and Winzen also praised her impressive aura. Railsa kindly asked the guy to try to resist this force, after which she was going to sharply shorten the distance. But her ability did not work and she flew down. Winzen caught the surprised girl, after which he gave her a click. Now he was able to injure the chief chamberlain, and he had about 4 months left before moving to the Crimson Fortress. Railsa asked in surprise how did he do it. At the same time, the black-haired man declared that it was impossible to touch the girl even with a double blow with a sword, but he was able to cut mana around her. This became possible thanks to the additional forces of the Dwarf King. Railsa still found it hard to believe in such a thing. Did Winzen cut mana to block her feature? The girl is not even sure if such a thing is possible. After that, she said that the young gentleman always exceeds her expectations. Now the guy wanted to get what the girl promised him. At the same time, having risen, Railsa, with a smile on her face, decided to fulfill her promise and tell about her blessing, namely, this is the flow of manta rays from the Wanderer of the Galaxy. Soon Winzen was sitting in a room with a formed pattern. The chief chamberlain was surprised. She could not even think that the young gentleman would be able to master her feature in just 2 days. When the seal was completed, Yulion hoped that it would not break through the roof, when suddenly out of the corner of his eye he saw an unusual entity. Crimson Fortress. A man asks a girl why she continues to do nothing and does not do her job. In response, the young lady replies that she does not want, as a martial artist, to waste her patent on all sorts of papers. At the same time, the dean of the Crimson Fortress under the name Vargan Pagoda asked her to stop talking nonsense and forced her to work. The lazy girl was the director of the Crimson Fortress, and her name was Helda Quibble. Suddenly the red-haired girl was surprised. She came across the questionnaire of Vincent Adenka, who was the 7th son in the main family. With this she decided that another unpleasant type would appear in their academy. However, Vargan had a slightly different opinion. He had heard about a guy who is a loser, and if the rumors turn out to be true, the dean is afraid that Winzen will tarnish the name of the Crimson Fortress, so he decides to get rid of the problem in the bud before he comes here. The maiden blue and the guys were enveloped in cold. Soon a snowstorm appeared in the room, and with it the goddess disappeared. Now Winzen has received his special feature from the Wanderer of the Galaxy. According to Railsa, from now on the guy will not leave a trace even in the snow, and this feature is called an ice step. In the evening, the guys gathered at the table and decided to scout out information about the castle they were going to go to. According to Yulion, the Crimson Fortress is more of a fortress than a training academy. The blonde-haired man pointed to the mountains and said that the tower was right there, on the border with the house of Samion. In the past, when the archdemon's followers invaded this house, Arslan, like other heroes of that era, fought them off. It was then that they founded the training academy. Having heard this entertaining information from his ghostly friend, the black-haired man hopes to find a will from Arslan there. It may well be that it will be another dragon bone. However, Yulion does not agree with Winzen, because there is another legend there, which says that there is not a dragon bone hidden in the fortress, but another treasure. Namely, the divine fruit. It is said that it is more effective than any medicine in the world, and there are also rumors that the fruit is able to resurrect the dead. The legend tells that there is a tree in the academy on which these fruits grow. On this occasion, there is even a separate rumor in which it says that the fortress was built for the sake of this divine tree. In the past, Yulion would not have believed in such childish legends, but now everything is different. The blonde-haired man notices that with the help of this incredible tool, they will be able to heal the decaying sacrum and avoid death, because when they are accepted to the academy, they will have only 9 years left. However, Vincent claims that this is not the case, because after they overextended this body, they have even less time left. But Yulion is not upset. He intends to reveal the secrets of the divine fruit and get his hands on it. Immediately, the red-eyed man reading the book is distracted and is interested in the blonde. The fact is that he found information that says that in the Crimson Fortress he will have to survive without the financial support of his family. At the same time, Yulion hastened to explain that this rule was introduced in order to prevent any lawlessness that can be achieved with the help of money, because the heirs of other families and their offshoots will also study in the fortress. At the same time, Winzen faced another question: where can he find the money? But the pompous Yulion told the black-haired man that it was not worth worrying. he had previously invested in a place called the Sixth Magic Tower. If the Adenka family and Samion are known for their swordsmanship, then the Sixth Magic Tower is famous for its elite magic training. Therefore, it is possible to sponsor the research of magicians, and after a while it can fully pay off. The magician in whom Yulion decided to fall in love, named Varnelli, recently he became a co-owner of the tower, and his full name is Varnelli Pagoda. This mechanics with a contribution of money has no minuses. The only problem that may arise is that if the co-owner dies, then their investment will turn into nothing. At this moment, an unknown person sneaks up behind the back of the named Varnelli Pagoda and strikes. But Yulion does not even consider such an option, because such a person as the co-owner of the Magic Tower cannot die so easily. The next morning, reading the newspaper, the guys watch the news that the co-owner of the Sixth Magic Tower, Varnelli Pagoda, has died. Yulion could not believe such a thing, and soon he clutched his head and began to sob, because he had invested his hard-earned money for this. However, Vincent asked the boy to calm down and offered to at least give the money to the deceased before morning. But the spirit was in no condition to pay homage, because if all this is true, then they will surely die from the head in this damned fortress. Ignoring the crybaby, Vincent decides to continue reading the article, which says that they found the will of the murdered woman, which states that she leaves all her property and research to her only younger brother, namely Vargan Pagoda. The dean stood on the edge of the fortress and was completely immersed in his thoughts. They were born together in the Pagoda family, but he did not have a shred of her genius potential. Against her background he was recognized as a disgrace of the family. But now, the guys decide to find this Vargan. They have 4 months left before the trip. They have to collect as much information as possible, and also Vincent has to become even stronger as possible. 4 months later, in the mountains of the Crimson Fortress, we'll take the guy to his destination. Rails says that for security reasons, the young gentleman must continue on foot. The guy will have to go along the specified road, and then the director of the Crimson Fortress will come out to meet the entrant. Vincent doesn't even know how to thank a woman for everything she has done for him. The guy is sincerely grateful to her, but the girl says that it's not difficult for her. At the same time, Red-Eyed assures the girl that his mother would be of the same opinion. If it were so, Railsa would cry with happiness. At this moment she wishes the boy good luck and asks him to take good care of himself. After that, their paths parted and the guys headed to the Crimson Fortress. The dean stood over his director and informed her that a young gentleman from the main branch of the family was due to arrive soon. But the girl was not too happy about this, because it was not in her style to behave formally and see people off. At this moment, a crystal lights up on the table, which says that in recent days, a monster has invaded residential buildings in the district and citizens need the help of the director. Hearing this, the girl was inspired and jumped up. She said that she was obliged to go there, because her duty as the director of the academy is to protect the inhabitants of the fortress. However, this is not the case, and a confused voice from the magic crystal says that this is a weak monster, so they only need a few swordsmen. But the girl did not care. She was already sitting on the window and was ready to move out in order to carry out such an important assignment. But before she left, she turned to Vargan and said that she was leaving the direct heir of the Adenka family to him. The guy didn't even have time to object, as the crazy girl jumped off the window and left him alone. Having seen such a sad case, the subordinate asked the dean what they should do with young Mr. Vincent. At the same time, Vargan declares that he himself will go instead of this stupid, teleporting soldiers meet him, and the black-haired man hurries to find out where Vincent is now. At the same time, having served Binkle to the dean, the guys announce that the guy is in that direction. Having looked, he was sincerely surprised, because the chief chamberlain of Rails appeared before his eyes. Vargan heard that Vincent was good for nothing, and then he wondered if the guy was really so useless that such a strong man was needed to protect him. The soldiers are interested in what to do with the exam and whether they should reduce the complexity, but the dean declares that there will be no changes and he is going to personally monitor the process. He was going to get rid of the boy anyway, before he had a chance to join Baygrave. The fortress, and now was the ideal moment for this. At this, Vargan Pagoda announced that the first exam is declared open and the conquest of the illusory monster will begin right now. Meanwhile, Vincent, along with his servants, continued to climb the mountain on foot, when suddenly a bright light appeared near the fortress, and soon the roar of wild monsters could be heard in the snowy forest. Now it became clear to the black-haired boy that the exam had already begun. However, this is only in his favor, because it's time for him to experience the result of his hellish training with Railsa. With these thoughts he took the blade out of its sheath and was ready to receive a warm greeting from this academy. Wild eyes could be seen right in front of the black-haired young gentleman in the thicket of the forest. The strongest predator in the snowy mountains region stood in front of him, a blue-eyed white tiger.